Hello everyone, my name is Akshish Piri and this is a video where I'm explaining Python tuples. Tuples are ordered immutable collections. They're very similar to lists in the terms of they are ordered and they can allow duplicates, but also very different because while lists are mutable, tuples are immutable, means that you cannot change the values once you have created it. You can think tuple as your date of birth because once you have your date of birth, it's fixed, you cannot change it. But you can think list as your shopping cart because once you have the items of shopping cart, you can change, add, remove or modify the ingredients. So creating tuples is very easy. You have to use parentheses. For example, I have a coordinate variable here and I have two values as you can see here, and when I put them under parentheses, it creates me a good old tuple. But this is not the only way to create tuples. You can also create tuples without parentheses using packing, which basically means I put a variable called point here and write values 10, 20 with comma. That's very important. Comma is very important. So when I use that, it makes me a tuple. But the very classic problem is that in single item tuples, for example, when I put 42 inside parentheses, you may think of it as a tuple, but that's not the case. It just creates an integer data type inside brackets. But when I put 42 with a comma inside brackets, it creates me a tuple. You can also create empty tuple and add like values from a list afterwards. And just like lists, you can use indexing, slicing, and also searching inside a tuple like you do in list. But the main important defining feature of a tuple is its immutability, that once you have created it, you cannot change them. So for example, I have this date of birth tuple with a year, month and a day. So if I want to change the date, so I use the 0th index and I update a new value, and when I try to run it, it won't work as it gives me a type error because tuple does not support item assignment. You cannot also append, remove or insert either, but what you can do is a small little workaround. You can convert a tuple to a list, modify the list and convert it back to a tuple. That works. This is because tuples are very faster than lists because they are very memory efficient, because they have a smaller size than lists, as you can see here. Next, we want to talk about a very important thing called tuple packing. Packing basically means bundling multiple values into one tuple. Python does this automatically because when you assign multiple values into one variable. For example, I have an employee variable tuple and it has some values of name, ID, role and a salary. So when I try to run it, it gives me a good old tuple. And I can also use it without parentheses like I talked about before. So this is a small example where we use it, tuple packing. And the next important thing is tuple unpacking. Unpacking means extracting values from a tuple into individual variables. For example, when you open a parcel from a delivery like Amazon, you take each item and put it in its own place. Similarly, tuple unpacking does the same. For example, I have this tuple of employee and it has name, employee ID, role and salary. And if I want individual elements back in its own place, I can use this method called unpacking. So name, employee ID, role and salary are all in tuple. But very important to remember that when you put name, it should align with the value you're putting. You cannot put salary here in the place of role and expect you to get salary there. That does not work like that. Tuple unpack function also returns value directly like you see here. And if you do not want to include one element, like you want to ignore a particular element, you can use underscore for values you want to ignore. And there's some more unpacking. You can use the star for more unpacking elements as you see here. Then we talk about swapping variables. This is Python's coolest trick because in most languages, swapping two variables needs a temporary variable. But in Python, tuple packing and unpacking helps us do it in one line. For example, this is the old way. I have a value of I have a variable a which equates to the number 10, b gives us 20. And when I put a temporary variable called temp, which equals a, and a equals b and b equals temp, this is the old way to find the numbers. If I want to change them, swap the variable basically. But tuple helps us do this in a faster way. So for example, I have a equals 10, b equals 20. I can write this. This is a old case of tuple unpacking and packing. So this is B and A is packed as a tuple and it gets unpacked into A and B. As you can see here, it does it in a small, easier and a faster way. This is an example. We have a rank 1 player called Mira and a rank 2 player called Ria. So before their rank was Mira was having rank 1 and Ria was having rank 2. But after some time, if I want to change the rank, I can do this like I did before. So if you want to ever decide when to use tuple and when to use list, it's very easy. For data that never changes, you have to use a tuple. For function that returns multiple values, you have to use a tuple. For dictionary keys, you have to use a tuple. For data that updates like rows or strings, you have to use a list. If you want to sort, filter, modify, you have to use a list. If you have large fixed datasets and want fast access, you have to use a tuple. And you want to communicate that this should not change, it should be permanent, that tuple should be a better option for you. Thank you, and that's it for this video. Thank you.